She was her family's best-kept secret, shoved into the shadows because of her size, while her sister stole the spotlight. "No man would ever want you," her sister sneered at the city's most exclusive gala. But New York's most ruthless Mafia boss was listening, and he strongly disagreed. The private dining room of Le Bernardin in Midtown Manhattan was suffocatingly quiet, save for the faint clinking of baccarat crystal. To the outside world, this was just an exclusive seafood restaurant, catering to Wall Street's elite. But tonight, the entire restaurant had been bought out, the doors locked, and the security cameras disabled. Sophia Gallagher sat at the far end of the long mahogany table, trying to make herself as small as possible, a near impossible feat when you were a size 20 in a family of people who looked like they lived on celery and spite. At 26, Sophia was the unseen engine keeping the Gallagher family afloat. She had a brilliant mind for numbers, a degree in forensic accounting, and a quiet resilience. But to her father, Thomas, and her younger sister, Ellie, Sophia was an embarrassment, a stain on their polished high society image. While Ellie spent her days at Pilates and shopping at the Cartier flagship on Fifth Avenue, Sophia spent hers in the windowless basement office of Gallagher Shipping in Red Hook, desperately trying to hide the fact that her father was driving their generational wealth into the ground. Thomas had made disastrous investments in commercial real estate over in Hudson Yards, bleeding their accounts dry. To cover the losses, he had borrowed money. Not from a bank like J.P. Morgan or Chase, but from the Rossi Syndicate. $12 million borrowed from the most lethal organized crime family on the East Coast, operating under the guise of a private equity firm, Rossi Holdings. Tonight was the deadline. They didn't have the $12 million. Instead, Thomas was offering the only asset he had left, an alliance by marriage, securing the Rossi family a permanent, legitimate foothold in the Brooklyn shipping terminals, and the sacrificial lamb, or rather, the glittering prize, was supposed to be Ellie. "Stop fidgeting, Sophia. The seams are going to burst," Ellie hissed, her voice a cruel whisper that echoed in the tense room. Ellie looked flawless in a custom emerald green Versace gown that clung to her size 2 frame. Sophia flushed, her hands dropping to her lap. Her mother had purchased Sophia's dress from Saks Fifth Avenue, but deliberately bought it a size too small, claiming it would motivate her to lose weight before the dinner. Instead, the dark navy velvet dug painfully into her waist and arms, restricting her breathing and serving as a constant, humiliating reminder of her size. "I'm just trying to breathe, Ellie," Sophia murmured, keeping her eyes fixed on the white tablecloth. "Well, breathe quieter," Ellie snapped, adjusting a diamond tennis bracelet on her slender wrist. "Tonight has to be perfect. Gabriel Rossi is coming. Do you understand what that means? He's the most powerful man in New York. When he marries me, our family is untouchable." Sophia bit the inside of her cheek. She had seen the Rossi ledgers. She knew the blood that stained the money keeping Ellie in designer clothes. "Marriage to a man like that isn't a fairy tale, Ellie. It's a transaction," Ellie scoffed, looking Sophia up and down with raw, unfiltered disgust. "Of course you would think that. Look at you. You're pouring out of that dress like a melted candle. Don't stand too close to the hors d'oeuvres when he walks in. Gabriel Rossi wants a trophy, not a tragedy. Let's be honest, Sophia. No man would want you, let alone a king. You're just here to make me look better by comparison." The words hit Sophia like a physical blow, heavy and bruising. She was used to the insults, having endured them her entire life. But the sheer venom in Ellie's voice tonight was staggering. Sophia's throat tightened. She wanted to run out into the cool Manhattan air, to hail a cab and disappear into the anonymity of the city. But she stayed. because if this deal fell through, her father wouldn't just go bankrupt. He would end up in the East River. Before Sophia could form a response, the heavy oak doors of the dining room swung open. The air in the room instantly dropped 10 degrees. Gabriel Rossi did not enter a room. He claimed it. Standing 6'3", he was a terrifying juxtaposition of brutal violence and immaculate wealth. He wore a midnight blue tailored suit from Brioni that hugged the broad, dangerous lines of his shoulders. His dark hair was meticulously styled, but his eyes, pitch black and utterly devoid of warmth, spoke of a man who had ripped his empire from the hands of his enemies. Flanked by his underboss and 2 silent men in trench coats, Gabriel walked toward the table. Thomas Gallagher immediately stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. He was sweating profusely. "Mr. Rossi, welcome. Please, sit." Gabriel didn't look at Thomas. His dark gaze swept over the room, clinically assessing the exits, the lighting, and finally, the people. His eyes slid past Ellie, who had leaned forward to showcase her plunging neckline, and stopped for a fraction of a second on Sophia in the shadows. Sophia's breath caught. For a moment, those terrifying black eyes seemed to pierce right through her velvet dress, cataloguing her every secret. Then he looked away, taking the seat at the head of the table. "I don't have time for a 5-course meal, Gallagher." Gabriel's voice was a low, gravelly baritone that vibrated in Sophia's chest. "I have a flight out of Titterborough in 3 hours. Let's talk about my 12 million. Ellie, sensing her moment, poured a glass of rare Macallan 25 and slid it toward Gabriel with a seductive smile. "My father has a wonderful proposition for you, Gabriel. We know how much you value family and expansion." Gabriel stared at the glass of scotch, then slowly raised his eyes to Ellie. "Did I give you permission to use my first name?" The room went dead silent. Ellie's face drained of color, her seductive smile faltering. I just thought—" "Don't think," Gabriel interrupted, his tone chilling. He looked back at Thomas. "You don't have my money. You're offering your shipping lanes. And to ensure I don't liquidate your assets and your kneecaps, you're offering a marriage tie." "Yes," Thomas blurted out, wiping his forehead with a linen napkin. "Ellie is. She is the jewel of the Gallagher family. Educated at Vassar, well-connected, beautiful. She would be an exceptional wife for a man of your stature." Gabriel leaned back, interlacing his large, scarred fingers. He reached into his breast pocket and tossed a thick, leather-bound ledger onto the table. It landed with a heavy thud. Sophia's blood turned to ice. It was the master ledger. The real one, the one she kept hidden on an encrypted server. "I had my people audit your company," Gabriel said softly. "You're a fool, Thomas. You hemorrhage money. But someone inside your little failing empire is a genius." Gabriel tapped the ledger. 2 months ago, someone restructured your offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, exploiting a tax loophole that legally washed $4 million. They set up shell corporations, so perfectly layered that even the IRS couldn't find a loose thread. "Who did it?" Thomas swallowed hard. I manage all the finances, Mr. Rossi. I assure you, my business acumen." Gabriel drew a sleek, suppressed handgun from his jacket and placed it on the table. He didn't point it at anyone, but the threat was deafening. "Lie to me again, Thomas, and your daughter's wedding will double as your funeral. Who cooked the books?" "It was me." The small, trembling voice broke the silence. Every head snapped toward the end of the table. Sophia slowly stood up, her legs shaking so violently she had to grip the edge of the mahogany table to stay upright. "Sophia, shut up!" Thomas hissed. "She's a secretary, Mr. Rossi. She doesn't know what she's saying." "I did it," Sophia said, her voice growing firmer as she stepped out of the shadows. "I created the Sea Corps in Delaware to divert the Hudson Yards debt, and I routed the liquid assets through the Caymans using proxy signatures. I kept you from finding out about the debt for 6 months, because I knew you would kill him." Gabriel stood up slowly. He walked around the table, his heavy footsteps echoing. Ellie shrank back in her chair, but Sophia forced herself to stand tall, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. Gabriel stopped mere inches from Sophia. Up close, he smelled of cedar wood, gunpowder, and dangerous wealth. He looked down at her, his dark eyes raking over her full figure, taking in the ill-fitting dress, the flush on her plump cheeks, the terrified defiance in her eyes. "You did this?" Gabriel asked, his voice dropping to an intimate, dangerous murmur. Sophia nodded, refusing to look away. "Yes. I'm the accountant. I run Gallagher Shipping." Gabriel stared at her for a long, agonizing moment. Then, something shifted in his expression. The cold brutality melted into something deeply predatory. Something like hunger. He turned his head slightly toward Thomas. "The debt is forgiven. The shipping lanes are mine." Ellie let out a breathless, triumphant laugh and stood up, stepping toward Gabriel. "Thank you. You won't regret this. I will make a perfect Rossi." Gabriel held up a hand, stopping Ellie in her tracks without even looking at her. His eyes never left Sophia's face. "I don't want the skinny, loud one," Gabriel said coldly, his words slicing through the room. Ellie gasped, stepping back as if she'd been slapped. "What? But I'm the beautiful one. Look at her. She's fat. She's a whale. No man would ever want her." Gabriel turned to Ellie, and the pure malice in his gaze made the younger sister whimper. "You think I want a woman whose only discernible skill is starving herself and maxing out a black Amex? I don't need a fragile ornament, little girl. I need an empire builder." He turned back to Sophia, and the darkness in his eyes softened just a fraction. He reached out, his large, warm hand gently gripping Sophia's chin, tilting her face up. Her breath hitched. No man had ever touched her with anything but accidental indifference. But Gabriel touched her like she was the most valuable thing in the room. "Pack your things," Gabriel murmured, his thumb brushing over her lower lip. "You're coming with me." "Where?" Sophia whispered, her mind spinning. "Home. To be my wife," before her father could object, before her sister could finish crying. Gabriel Rossi laced his fingers through Sophia's and pulled her toward the door. As they walked out of Le Bernardin and into the crisp night air, a fleet of black SUVs idled by the curb. A driver opened the door to a sleek Mercedes Maybach S-Class. Gabriel guided her into the plush leather interior and slid in beside her. The doors shut, sealing them in absolute privacy. Sophia was trembling, overwhelmed by the rapid turn of events. You're marrying me just for my accounting skills?" Gabriel poured 2 glasses of champagne from the car's console, handing her one. He leaned in close, the streetlights flickering across his sharp jawline. "Sophia," he said softly, a dark smirk playing on his lips. "I've known about your accounting skills for a year. I bought your father's debt 6 months ago, specifically to back him into a corner. I didn't come to that dinner tonight to evaluate my options." He reached out, tracing the painful seam of the velvet dress cutting into her waist, his eyes darkening with possessive rage at the mark it left. "I came to collect what was already mine." The Mercedes Maybach glided smoothly through the wrought-iron gates of a sprawling, fortress-like estate in Sands Point, Long Island. The property was a masterpiece of stone and glass, perched on a cliff overlooking the dark, churning waters of the Long Island Sound. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter, their silhouettes barely visible in the midnight fog. Sophia stepped out of the car, her legs still trembling from the adrenaline of the night. Gabriel placed a heavy, reassuring hand on the small of her back, guiding her up the sweeping marble steps and through the massive double doors. The interior was a staggering display of wealth, vaulted ceilings, modern Italian artwork, and a dual-curved staircase framing a custom chandelier that looked like cascading diamonds. "My staff has prepared the master suite for you," Gabriel said, shrugging off his suit jacket and handing it to a waiting butler. "You will sleep there. I have a guest room down the hall." Sophia blinked in surprise, wrapping her arms around her waist. "You're not—" "We aren't—" Gabriel stopped, turning to face her fully. The predatory intensity in his black eyes softened into something dangerously tender. He stepped into her personal space, reaching out to gently trace the curve of her soft jawline. "I am a ruthless man, Sophia, but I am not a savage. When you share my bed, it will be because you walked into it willingly, not because of a business transaction with your worthless father." The next morning, Sophia awoke in a bed the size of a small island, wrapped in fret linens that felt like spun silk. As she sat up, a quiet knock preceded the entrance of 3 immaculately dressed women rolling massive garment racks into the room. "Good morning, Miss Gallagher," the lead woman said, with a warm, professional smile. "Mr. Rossi requested a complete overhaul of your wardrobe. We are personal shoppers from Bergdorf Goodman." Sophia pulled the sheets up to her chin, her old insecurities instantly flaring. I don't think you have my size on those racks. I'm a size 20. The woman laughed warmly. "Mr. Rossi was very specific, ma'am. He instructed us to bring the finest custom pieces in the city, tailored exclusively for your exact measurements. He specifically requested we throw out anything that restricts your breathing or hides your curves." For the next 4 hours, Sophia was pampered, measured, and dressed in fabrics she had only ever seen from afar. There were cashmere sweaters from Loro Piana, custom-tailored silk blouses, and wide-leg trousers that draped beautifully over her thick thighs and wide hips. When she finally looked in the floor-to-ceiling mirror, she didn't see the tragic, fat sister shoved into the corner. She saw a woman of substance. She looked powerful. She looked breathtaking. When Sophia descended the staircase, she found Gabriel in his sprawling home office. The room was a command center of sleek monitors and dark walnut wood. He was on the phone, speaking rapid, aggressive Italian. But the moment he saw her, the words died in his throat. He slowly hung up the receiver, his eyes dark and dilated, as they slowly raked over her. She wore a tailored crimson silk blouse that tucked elegantly into high-waisted black trousers, emphasizing the generous swell of her breasts and the dramatic curve of her hips. "You look—" Gabriel's voice was a rough rasp. He stood up, walking toward her with the slow, deliberate stalk of a predator. Exactly as a queen should. He stopped in front of her, his large hands settling on her waist, pulling her flush against his solid, muscular frame. "Do you know when I first decided you were mine, Sophia?" She shook her head, her pulse racing as she looked up into his face. 14 months ago, Gabriel murmured, his thumb brushing over her cheekbone. "At the Robin Hood Foundation gala, your sister was on the dance floor, trying to get the attention of a Wall Street banker. But you were sitting in the coat room, barefoot, frantically typing on a laptop, fixing a catastrophic margin call your father had triggered. I watched you for an hour. You were brilliant, ruthless with those numbers, and completely unaware of how incredibly beautiful you are. I decided right then. I spent the next year buying up your father's debt through shell companies just so I could legally own the leverage to take you." Sophia's breath hitched. "You orchestrated all of it? Just for me?" "For you," he confirmed, pressing a slow, searing kiss to her forehead. "And it's a good thing I did, Because your father wasn't just losing money, Sophia. He was trying to sell you to the Moretti family. Sophia froze. What? Gabriel walked over to his desk and turned one of the monitors toward her. It displayed an intercepted email chain. The Moretti syndicate runs the ports in New Jersey. They are my biggest rivals. Your father owed them money, too. 3 weeks ago, Ellie convinced your father that you were dead weight. They offered you to the Moretti underboss, a man known for beating his women to death. They were going to trade you to clear a $2 million gambling debt. A cold, numbing horror washed over Sophia. Her own family. Ellie and her father were willing to send her to a monster to save their own skins. The years of emotional abuse, the snide comments about her weight, the stolen credit for her hard work, it all paled in comparison to this ultimate betrayal. I intercepted the deal, Gabriel said coldly, his jaw ticking with violent rage. I crippled the Moretti ports the next day to send a message, and I called your father's loan due. You were never going to the Morettis, Sophia. But I wanted you to see this. I wanted you to know exactly who they are. Sophia stared at the screen, the last remaining shred of loyalty to the Gallagher family dissolving into ash. In its place, a dark, simmering fury ignited. She had spent her entire life shrinking herself to make them comfortable. No more. She looked up at Gabriel, her eyes hard and cold. Gabriel. Yes, Mia Regina? I want to ruin them. A slow, terrifying smirk spread across Gabriel's face. He pulled out the leather chair at his desk and gestured for her to sit at the control center of Rossi Holdings. Then let's get to work. 6 weeks later, the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was awash in the glow of 1,000 crystal chandeliers. It was the annual Metropolitan Commerce Gala, a strictly invitation-only event where New York's billionaires, politicians, and shadows of the underworld mingled over Dom Perignon. Gabriel and Sophia's arrival halted the room entirely. Sophia looked like an avenging goddess. She wore a custom-made Oscar de la Renta gown in midnight black. The dress featured a plunging neckline that proudly displayed her generous cleavage, pulling tight across her waist before flowing over her lush, wide hips in a dramatic train. Around her neck sat a 30-carat Harry Winston diamond choker, Gabriel's wedding gift to her. She didn't hide her size. She weaponized it, moving with a regal, intoxicating confidence. Gabriel walked beside her in a bespoke black tuxedo, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. He looked exactly like what he was, a king entering his conquered territory. He didn't look at the room. He only looked at Sophia, his dark eyes ablaze with raw worship and pride. Across the ballroom, standing near the cheap wine station, were Thomas and Ellie Gallagher. They looked shattered. Over the past month, Gallagher Shipping had been systematically dismantled. Someone had triggered audits, frozen their offshore accounts, and legally transferred their last remaining assets to a blind trust. They were days away from eviction from their Upper East Side penthouse. Ellie, wearing a recycled designer dress from 3 seasons ago, stared at Sophia with wide, disbelieving eyes. The jealousy radiating from her was palpable. Unable to control herself, Ellie broke away from her father and marched across the ballroom floor, intercepting Sophia and Gabriel near the grand staircase. Gabriel? Ellie breathed, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, ignoring her sister entirely. She reached out, trying to place a delicate hand on Gabriel's arm. It is so good to see you. I've been trying to call your office. My father and I. Gabriel didn't even blink. He smoothly shifted his body, placing himself as a physical barrier between Ellie's hand and his jacket. If you touch me, Miss Gallagher, my security team will break your wrist and throw you into Central Park. Ellie gasped, shrinking back. She finally looked at Sophia, her eyes narrowing with desperate malice. "Look at you, playing dress-up in stolen money. You think a diamond necklace makes you less fat? You think he actually loves you? He's just using you for the ledgers, Sophia. You're still the ugly sister." The ballroom around them had gone deadly quiet, the elite crowd eagerly eavesdropping on the drama. Gabriel's muscles coiled, his hand moving instinctively toward his jacket, fully prepared to end Ellie's life in front of 500 witnesses. But Sophia placed a gentle hand on his chest, stopping him. She didn't need him to fight this battle. She was the weapon now. Sophia took a step forward, towering over her sister's frail frame. She didn't look hurt. She looked amused. "You're right about one thing, Ellie," Sophia said, her voice carrying clearly across the marble floor. "He did want me for the ledgers. Because unlike you, I actually have a brain. But you're wrong about the money being stolen. It's legally mine." Sophia reached into her sequined clutch and pulled out a folded legal document, handing it to her sister. Ellie unfolded it with shaking hands. What is this?" Ellie stammered, the color draining from her face. "That is the deed to Gallagher Shipping, along with the title to the Upper East Side penthouse," Sophia said smoothly. "I bought them yesterday morning for pennies on the dollar. I also liquidated your personal trust fund to pay off the severance packages for the employees you and father fired to fund your shopping habits at Cartier." Thomas Gallagher, who had hurried over, let out a choked sound. "Sophia, you can't do this. We are your family. You tried to sell me to the Moretti Syndicate to pay off a gambling debt," Sophia replied, her voice cold as ice. The audible gasps from the surrounding elite made Thomas flinch. "You are not my family. You are my former employers, and you are officially bankrupt." Ellie's hands shook so violently the paper fluttered to the floor. "You're a monster," she whispered, tears of absolute defeat spilling over her mascara. "You took everything." "No, Ellie," Sophia smiled, stepping perfectly into Gabriel's waiting arm. "I just stopped letting you take from me." Gabriel looked down at his wife, a dark, terrifying smile spreading across his face. He kissed the side of her head, completely unbothered by the audience. "Are we finished here, Mrs. Rossi? Or would you like me to buy the hotel so we can throw them out of it?" "We're finished," Sophia said, her heart soaring with a fierce, unbreakable joy. As they walked away, leaving her father and sister weeping in the center of the ballroom, Sophia leaned into Gabriel's warmth. She was no longer the fat, hidden secret in the basement. She was a woman who owned her body, her brilliant mind, and her unyielding power. She was Sophia Rossi, and with the most dangerous man in New York worshipping the ground she walked on, she knew she would never hide in the shadows again. What a breathtaking journey of revenge and romance. Sophia proved that true power isn't about shrinking yourself to fit someone else's mold, but about finding the person who thinks your mind, your curves, and your strength are an absolute masterpiece. If you loved Sophia's epic transformation from a hidden genius to a ruthless mafia queen, hit that like button, share this video with anyone who needs a reminder of their own worth, and don't forget to subscribe for more dramatic, thrilling audio stories. See you in the next one.